WWE are heading full steam ahead into their first ever women's only pay-per-view, Evolution, which is due to be held on the 28th of October. WWE is pulling out all the stops for this event by bringing back some of the most iconic names and figures in the history of women's wrestling. We already have confirmed names such as Ronda Rousey, Nikki Bella, Alexa Bliss, Trish Stratus, Lita, and more. Many others like Alundra, Blayze, and Molly Holly are heavily rumored for appearances at the show. Despite such a stacked card, there are many names that will not be coming back for this event due to a multitude of reasons. This is Wrestling Hub, and here we are looking at 10 wrestlers WWE will not be bringing back for Evolution. Tori was one of the more prominently featured women at the start of the Attitude Era. Unlike most women during this time, she was actually a wrestler, not just a model. She had been wrestling for over 5 years at the time of her hiring by the WWE. She debuted in '98 as a Sable-obsessed fan, the same role Mickie James would have with Trish Stratus when she debuted. She feuded with the likes of Sable, Ivory, and Jacqueline. She fought for the women's title on multiple occasions, including at WrestleMania 15. After this, she started transitioning into a valet, becoming the on-screen girlfriend for Kane. She feuded with X-Pac and the McMahon-Helmsley faction. She would be portrayed as a neurotic girlfriend who people would use to manipulate Kane into attacking their enemies. She would leave the company by 2001, being released after she made accusations against Raven for having verbally abused her. The sour nature of her departure will always hang over her head while discussing if she ever wants to return to WWE. Today she is a yogini and probably wouldn't be interested in coming back for Evolution or see WWE bring her back. An alien name to most modern wrestling fans, Leilani Kai is one of the pioneers of women's wrestling. She was trained by the controversial Fabulous Moolah and starred in the WWE during their first boom period due to the Rock and wrestling connection. Kai entered the first ever WrestleMania as women's champion and then lost the belt to Wendy Richter. Before that, she had actually beaten Richter to win the title during a period where women's wrestling was also advertised a lot. She was a part of the historic Brawl to End It All, where Richter defeated her mentor Moolah for the title. Kai also formed a highly influential tag team known as the Glamour Girls, which was managed by none other than Jimmy Hart. Her tag team partner was Judy Martin and they won the women's tag team titles together. She had a featured spot but would leave the company in '89. She has since won titles in Japan and even the NWA. Today, Kai is 58 years old and is almost missing from WWE history. She is not mentioned as a part of many of the historic moments that she created and witnessed during her run with the company. This lack of relevance that she has fallen into means that it is unlikely WWE will bring her back for the show. A member of the women's division during the Attitude Era, Stacy Carter is a former women's champion. She is one of the many women that were hired for their looks rather than their actual wrestling ability. Even though the Cat was not a trained wrestler, she was immensely over with the Attitude Era crowd. She was signed as the assistant to Debra, Jeff Jarrett, and even Chyna at one point. She was almost exclusively a valet but did get into the ring, winning the women's title in her Miss Kitty moniker. She wrestled at WrestleMania 2000 in the only singles match on the card against Terry Runnels. She gained notoriety amongst the fans due to her tendency of flashing the crowd. Apart from that, she was a terrific manager too, being able to manipulate the crowd however she wanted. She would leave the company by 2001, having had backstage issues with the likes of Vince McMahon. The Cat never saw her relationship with the company be repaired after her firing, and that will probably be the reason that WWE won't bring her back for Evolution despite her Attitude Era stardom. Briefly mentioned with the Cat, Debra was another one of the Attitude Era stalwarts for the WWE. Having worked for WCW before jumping ship to WWE, Debra came to the company with valet experience. She worked alongside Jeff Jarrett in the WWE, being his on-screen girlfriend. Debra was the reason for one of the most infamous WWE catchphrases to emerge. That was the usage of puppies while referring to her breasts by Road Dogg. Beyond that, Debra is also a former women's champion and was voted as Manager of the Year and Woman of the Year in 1998 by the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Debra was Jarrett's valet for most of her run, sticking by the country boy for almost the entirety of her time with the company. After her time with Jarrett had ended, Debra was managing The Rock and real-life husband Steve Austin on camera. She would leave the company in 2002 with Austin. Debra will not be brought back because her ties with the company have been heavily damaged. Debra and Steve Austin had a very public domestic abuse dispute in which Debra accused Austin of hitting her. This led to public scrutiny for the biggest name in WWE, which Vince wouldn't be too pleased with. She also spoke about WWE not enforcing a drug policy during the Chris Benoit double murder suicide. Karma or Awesome Kong may not be notable in the WWE because of her extremely brief run, but she is one of the biggest names in the history of women's wrestling due to her work across promotions like TNA. Her brief run in the WWE saw her making an appearance in the Royal Rumble, becoming only the third person to have done this. In her 3 years under contract, the Royal Rumble appearance was her only official match. Karma's release took place because she wasn't ready in time to come back to wrestling after giving birth, but she did say that she wants to work with the company again. The issue being that WWE probably wouldn't ask her to make an appearance due to her failed run. Despite how important she was to the general growth of women's wrestling across the world, she also has mainstream appeal now, as she was a part of the highly popular Netflix show Glow. Another case in which the person considered primarily made her name outside the WWE, Gail Kim, is a very complicated case as WWE had dramatically botched her run in the company twice. Kim's first run happened right at the end of the Attitude Era in 2002, after Molly Holly helped her in getting signed. Her debut saw her win the women's title in a 7-woman battle royal. She would eventually lose the title but would enjoy a featured spot on the card until her abrupt release in 2004, where she was told that the company was going in a new direction. After success in TNA, Kim returned to the WWE in 2008 and stayed at the top of the division. She was constantly vying for the Women's and Divas title, but she never won the title but would feud with the likes of Michelle McCool, Melina, Mickie James, etc. She left the WWE after her contract expired because she felt like WWE held back their women's division and she vowed to never re-sign with the company. The way things ended between Kim and WWE means that the TNA Hall of Famer will probably never be on WWE's good books, and WWE will never be on hers. The reconciliation seems unlikely and probably will never happen. Melina was probably one of the biggest names in the women's division in the WWE during the 2007 to 2010 period. Even though she debuted as the valet to Johnny Nitro and Joey Mercury in the stable M&M, Melina would blossom as a singles competitor. She wrestled Michelle McCool and Tori Wilson in her first 2 competitive matches and would eventually become a fixture for the WWE's women's division. And she did so by winning the women's title 3 times and the Divas title twice. Melina, with her lengthy run in the company, saw her at the top of the division. She was considered to be one of the best wrestlers in the world by Bret Hart and is still remembered as having one of the best offensive arsenals in the history of the company. Pro Wrestling Illustrated had ranked her as high as number 3 in their top 50 list for women's wrestlers. She is possibly one of the first few athletic and talented women's wrestlers during the time where WWE were hiring models and not athletes. Melina would be released from the company in 2011, and this probably has a lot to do with her past, as she was mentioned as being a hothead backstage, especially towards the WWE management. She is remembered for having had multiple backstage indiscretions, and that is something WWE probably will hold against her, as she is barely mentioned when WWE run through their illustrious past of women's wrestling. A one-time women's champion and the 1997 Diva of the Year, Sable was possibly the biggest female presence in the history of pro wrestling. She debuted escorting an up-and-coming wrestler known as Hunter Hearst Helmsley at WrestleMania, but later became associated with her real-life husband Mark Marrow. She exploded in the eyes of the fans as her overly sexualized persona got over. Her ravishing looks and relative competence in the ring made for a great combination, but backstage a storm had been brewing. As she grew in popularity on screen, she was losing the same backstage. This led to Sable leaving the company and suing McMahon for sexual harassment and harboring an unsafe workplace. Although she still did return in 2003 for a short run as she was portrayed as McMahon's mistress, she would leave the company and has never been seen on WWE cameras since. Sable, who is married to Brock Lesnar, has decided not to make any appearances for the WWE after her departure in 2004. Whether it's for her issues with the sexualized nature in which WWE were using her, or be it the general harassment she probably faced, Sable will more than likely never appear on the WWE screen again, and that is a shame considering how over she was at that point. Tammy Lynn is still being billed as the original diva, and for good reason. She was instrumental in the repopularization of women's wrestling before its resurgence in the Attitude Era, which saw her as a very important cornerstone. Sunny joined the WWE in '95 after a stint with Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and she was the valet there and manager for Chris Candido and Thomas Pritchard of the Body Donnas. Even though she didn't have big names or titles, Sunny's ravishing looks endeared her to the fans. She was the most downloaded internet celebrity according to AOL and would have immense backstage pull due to her association with Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. She would be inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2011. Despite all this success, Sunny has fallen on hard times in her life. Due to financial worries, she had to start becoming a cybersex model and later went on to make a pornographic film as well. Family-friendly WWE would never appreciate that. The biggest travesty of all is easily the fact that she sold her Hall of Fame ring online. Her multiple arrests and an image that would not look good for the WWE means that Sunny's association with the company is probably over forever. The only wrestler on this list to have worked within the WWE developmental system before her main roster appearance, AJ Lee, was indoctrinated into the WWE system completely. As a result of that, it is no surprise that AJ Lee would perhaps become one of the greatest women to ever step foot in the ring. AJ Lee dragged a failing women's division to its current progressive state. She is one of the longest reigning Divas champions and one of the wrestlers who truly started the women's evolution. AJ's tweet about "Give Divas a Chance" is what morphed into the movement that it is today, and she is possibly responsible for the event on the 28th, but she will most likely not be there due to her marriage to CM Punk. CM Punk and WWE's association went sour very publicly and everyone knows their situation. Lee chose to retire from the WWE after her contract expired and hasn't even been mentioned since. AJ may have broken down a lot of barriers for the likes of Sasha Banks and Charlotte, but she just won't be able to bask in the adulation she deserves because the bridges between her and the WWE were burnt a long time ago and don't look like they will repair anytime soon. And these are 10 women that won't come back for WWE Evolution. I hope you're all having an amazing day. Thank you so much for watching Wrestling Hub, and I'll see you later with more videos.